Hey everyone! Welcome to The Young and the Restless. I'm Jane, and I'm so excited to have you here. If you love Young and the Restless, then you're in the right place. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a video. Alright, let's dive right in. The Young and the Restless teaser video for the week of August 4th to 8th reveals that Victor Newman intends to use Lily Winters against Kane Ashby, while Billy Abbott emerges as a surprise wavemaker. Adam Newman asks Kyle Abbott and Claire Newman why they are at Newman Media at the beginning of YNR's weekly promotional video. If not, why do Newmans show up at each other's offices without warning? Claire begs in the promotional video to make a deal. Victor may try to stop Claire and Kyle from moving in, but they may insist on going ahead with a transaction for Adam's old house. Victor will have to deal with more urgent matters in the upcoming week. Victor will ask Devin Winters and Lily whether they are aware that Kane has returned to the area at Crimson Lights. Since Kane will actually be back in Genoa City by then, Lily will insist that she make plans to avoid him at all costs. When the time comes, Victor will explain why he doesn't think that's necessarily a good idea. It appears that Victor is aware of Lily's weakness and plans to use it. Victor might try to force Lily to help him since he could use her to manipulate and dominate Kane. In a suite at the athletic club, Phyllis Summers will be thrilled to start a private meeting with Kane. However, Kane will eventually mention that someone else will be joining them. Phyllis will believe that this person must be a strong hit-hitter if Kane is permitting them to enter his business domain. When Billy gets to the door, Phyllis will know that Kane has invited him to their brainstorming session. Who wants to cause a commotion? This is the question Billy asks in the weekly teaser video. Kane will need help to take his big ambitions in GC through to fruition, but he may eventually give updates on the details. Can Kane trust Phyllis and Billy to finish the job? Can Billy and Phyllis trust that Kane won't turn on them? In fact, none of these people can be trusted, thus Kane, Phyllis, and Billy will all need to watch themselves in the next episodes. According to previews for The Young and the Restless, as Kane returns to Genoa City, there might be some unsettling news ahead. Carter led Nick and Sharon into a dirty room. Nick asked for Sharon's freedom. Sharon denied having anything to do with Damien's death. They will have a delicious meal later, Carter assured them. He locked the door. Nick pounded on the door and yelled. Sharon was shown locked in the room where Martin had imprisoned her in a black and white flashback. She brought herself back to the present and told Nick that she would not let him be taken away by himself. People know they've been taken away, Nick said. He pledged to protect Sharon. Nick was surprised that Sharon had accompanied him on this escape. Sharon joked that Nick had made a minor error in judgment in an effort to lighten the atmosphere. Sharon said that she was not as calm as she seemed. Nick rapped on the door again. Sharon believes that it is better to be incarcerated with someone than alone. Even Phyllis? Nick asked. Sharon hesitated, then added, yes, even Phyllis. Nick told Sharon that they had been locked in a room together before. Nick quipped that Kane would be angry with him because he didn't invite him to all of his weddings. Is Kane just playing tricks on them? Sharon wondered. Nick said that he had a plan, but he didn't know what it was. Nick said that Kane was shrewd and cunning. Sharon agreed with Nick that they haven't been able to cope with Kane because of their wide social circle. Kane has some kind of great strategy, Nick hinted. Sharon claimed that Kane was holding on to them in order to acquire Chancellor Industries. In summarizing Kane's actions, Nick mentioned that he bought real estate in Genoa City. Nick pounded on the door again in an attempt to get out. Sharon started to feel nervous. Nick comforted Sharon, recalling their bus voyage across London with Christian, Faith, and Noah. Sharon noted that she was again trapped against her will and that Nick was in danger this time. Sharon hugged Nick after he reassured her that nothing would happen to her. An anxious Audra ran upon Victor in a train cabin while looking for Chance. She should stay, Victor said. He reminded her of their pact and asked whether there had been any progress in her relationship with Kyle. Audra tried to soothe Victor by informing him that Kane wanted to join her and Kyle in the scent competition. Victor asked Audra why she hadn't blown the fuse sooner. Audra was anticipating Kyle to boast that he was on her when she told him that he would think he had the advantage. Victor was reassured by Audra that he would get his results. Then Michael interrupted them, saying he had urgent news and begged to meet with Victor. If Audra didn't deliver by tonight, Victor told her that everything would be off the table. Michael jokingly said he would not ask what that was. "It's none of your business," Victor jokingly said. Michael told Victor that their current situation is more important than their recent disagreement. Michael told Victor that Carter and an armed guard had put Nick and Sharon under house arrest. Victor wanted to know where Kane was. He wondered if Chance knew this and knew it. Michael offered to accompany Victor to confront Kane and provide legal advice, but Victor bounded off on his own. Then Lauren showed there, happy to see her husband. Michael updated her about his meeting with Victor. "Victor has no idea what loyalty is," Lauren said angrily. Victor had gone to confront Kane, Michael told Lauren. Lauren wondered if keeping Nick under house arrest was permitted in France or anywhere else. Michael recalled that in order to accomplish his goals, Kane would require Michael. Lauren figured that must be why they were there. Michael wondered if Nick's house imprisonment was part of a bigger plan. Michael pointed out that Kane desired Chancellor Industries. Lauren didn't get why Chancellor was the big end game when he had his empire. Michael's theory states that Colin, Jill, and Chancellor Industries are related. Lauren wondered what might be the secret. Michael didn't know, but he suspected Kane's feelings for Chancellor were more nuanced than they seemed. Lauren noted that other people, not only Victor, would get upset if their child was in danger. She asked Michael what he could do to ensure the release of Nick and Sharon. Michael said that his wrists were bound until the cops arrived. Nikki stumbled through the tangle of shrubs and found Kane. She confronted him about Nick being taken by his security team. Kane defended Nick's incarceration by saying that his attorney and staff had recommended it. Nikki demanded that Nick and Sharon be freed. Nikki reprimanded Kane, stating that if Nick wanted Kane dead, he wouldn't have kept the knife in his room. Kane was told angrily by Nikki that pursuing her children was not the same as seeking her company. Kane assured Nikki that he would rescue Nick and Sharon after the police arrived, and he revealed evidence that Nick was innocent. Nikki accused Kane of setting Nick up. Nikki cried out, "You have my son in captivity." She reminded Kane that he was playing with Damien's death and that he had split everyone up. Nikki asked how Kane, like his father, becomes so horrible and cruel. "I don't want any of this to happen," Kane remarked, asking Nikki to stop talking about Colin. "Kane just values what he can get out of people," Nikki said, asking what he would like in exchange for her son's freedom. Victor ended their dispute. "Kane Ashby, come see me!" Victor shouted. Victor demanded that Nick and his friend Sharon be released. He asserted that Kane refused to understand the repercussions of breaking the rules. Victor asked Kane whether he was using Nick and Sharon to get Chancellor Industries. Kane said, "I want to stay alive." Victor accused Nick of being responsible for Kane's supposed murder of a man. Victor told Kane, "You know he wouldn't come after you." Carter interrupted, adding, "You have hell to pay if you don't release him," and then he spoke into Kane's ear. Kane apologized and walked away. Victor then left as well. Carter and a man who appeared to be a security guard were escorting Nick and Sharon out. Jack and Diane informed Kyle. The fact that Kyle was performing well pleased Diane. According to Kyle, he disclosed Audra's scheme to trick him. He said he had to make sure she would never recover after dropping the hammer. Kyle revealed Audra's infidelity to his parents. He declined, telling both of his parents. Kyle claims that Audra used Damien's murder as a ruse to appear close to him. Diane wondered why Audra had put her friendship with Nate in danger. Kyle claims it's because she's repulsive. Jack asked Kyle why he hadn't come to him and Diane for support. Kyle said he knew a lot. He knew that no matter what he or Claire did, Victor would not change his mind. Kyle asserted that his actions were required. Diane asked what Kyle had promised Victor. Kyle revealed that he had promised Victor in writing that if he ever mistreated Claire, he would give him $5 million and leave Genoa City. He went on to say, "I would never break Claire's heart." Diane surmised that Victor attempted to seduce Audra in an attempt to persuade him to violate the contract. Kane's conviction that Nick wanted him dead was beyond Kyle's comprehension. Diane stated Victor will be furious when he finds out that Kane kidnapped Nick, according to Kyle, who said, "This entire trip is crazy." Jack suggested that Kyle stay away from Victor. Kyle said that Victor had gone too far and that his anger should not be underestimated. After that, Carter passed Kyle, Diane, and Jack. Victor passed them after Carter and told Kyle he didn't have time to talk to him. Jack suggested that Kyle stay away from Victor. The powerful and often cruel patriarch of the Newman family, Victor Newman, sat behind his enormous desk in his office at Newman Enterprises, his blue eyes piercing the man in front of him. Kane Ashby had just finished his latest report, but Victor's mind was focused on something much more personal than business at the moment. The recent kidnappings of Nick Newman and Sharon Collins had shaken Genoa City, and while Victor maintained his normal composure, those who knew him well could feel the storm brewing beneath the surface. The years he had spent building an empire, exploiting situations, and defending his family were not like this. Victor would not allow Nick's blood to be in doubt because he was his son, regardless of their complicated past. Despite her turbulent past with the Newmans, Victor had also come to respect Sharon and understood her importance to Nick. The thought of either of them being harmed by an unknown enemy was unbearable. Victor spoke in a loud, commanding voice that was hard to dispute as he leaned closer. It was never a good idea to challenge Victor Newman. Even with his own wealth and connections, Kane had seen what happened to those who disobeyed him, so he wasn't foolish enough to try to push Victor's patience too far. "Kane," he said deliberately, "I want Nick and Sharon to be set free. Immediately." He spoke with the unwavering assurance of a guy who consistently achieves his goals, without any uncertainty or slack. Kane moved a little, his face reserved. "But this is a difficult scenario that we are dealing with. If we hurry, we run the risk of..." Kane spoke gently. "Victor, I understand your concern." Victor interrupted him with a quick wave of his hand, shouting, raising his voice just enough to convey his annoyance, "I don't care about risks. Every minute they're in the hands of whoever took them is a minute too long. You have assets. Both Sharon and my son are out there. You have men. Utilize them." Taking a deep breath, Kane thought about what he could do. For personal reasons, he wanted Nick and Sharon safe, but he also knew that making a snap decision could backfire. Victor, however, was not the kind of man who accepted excuses. If he gave an order, he figured it would be executed instantly and without hesitation. Kane had known Victor long enough to understand that resistance was not an option when it came to family. Finally, Kane nodded and said, "Okay. I'll see it through, but you have to trust that I can handle it. If we charge in with our weapons blazing, we could put them at much greater risk." After a while, Victor nodded curtly, his mouth tensing. "All right. But don't take too long. Additionally, keep me updated at every turn." 2 reminders weren't necessary for Kane. He turned and left the office after pulling out his phone to mobilize his contacts. As Victor watched him go, his mind was racing with possibilities. This was different from his life of controlling things and influencing situations to fit his needs. This was not about business or power, but about family. And Victor Newman would use fire to wipe out the entire world to protect his own. Victor spent hours in his office because he would not go until he had answers. He called, solicited favors, and used every resource available to ensure Nick and Sharon made it back safely. He and Nick had fought many times over the years, but it didn't matter anymore since he couldn't bear the thought of his kid suffering harm. All that mattered was getting him home. Victor had already seen enough turmoil in Sharon's life to allow her to become a victim of any game being played. As night settled over Genoa City, Kane finally came back with news. "They are being held in an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town," he added in a tight but relieved voice. "We've found them. My men are coming in now." Victor jolted to his feet, his chair scraping the floor. "I'll accompany you." Kane hesitated. "Let my group handle it, Victor. It's too dangerous." "My son is that," Victor said, his face hardening. "I will not sit here and let someone else take him home." Victor's primary concern was getting Nick and Sharon out of the car safely, and within minutes they were racing toward the warehouse. Kane was smart enough not to resist. When they arrived, the action was already underway. Kane's men had defended the perimeter, and the sound of orders being shouted could be heard all night. Victor moved forward, his presence alone imposing authority, without waiting for the all-clear. They forced the warehouse door open and found Nick and Sharon inside, still alive but tied. Victor felt a wave of relief, but this was quickly followed by anger as he evaluated their condition. Nick looked up, his eyes filled with amazement. "Dad?" Victor was slow to respond, but instead he moved to free them, his hands firm despite the underlying anger, and Sharon sank forward, exhausted but unharmed, while Nick gazed at his father with a mixture of gratitude and defiance, typical Newman stubbornness, even when saved. "Took you long enough," Nick whispered, but his words were hollow. With a little smirk, Victor said, "Aim to avoid being abducted the next time." With trembling hands, Sharon chuckled and rubbed her wrists before saying, "I'm grateful, Victor." They would lament that someone had the gall to threaten his family, but Victor couldn't shake the thought as they exited the warehouse. Who did this, and why? He nodded once, returning to his usual bitter demeanor now that the immediate threat had passed. They rode back in silence, the experience weighing heavily on Victor, who knew that this was not the end, but that Nick and Sharon were safe, that questions needed to be answered, that scores needed to be settled, and that Victor Newman always paid his debts. By the time they returned to the Newman estate, the adrenaline had been replaced by exhaustion, and Victor, his protective instincts still activated, watched as Nick helped Sharon inside, his voice low as he turned to Kane and ordered, "Find out who was behind this. And bring them to me when you do." Kane nodded. Victor knew that he was not simply looking for justice, he wanted retribution. For now, his family was secure, but whomever had betrayed him would soon learn the hard way that no one ever threatened Victor Newman's family and got away with it. Victor gave himself a moment of bitter pleasure as he stood on the steps of his house and looked into the darkness. The game was not yet over. It was only beginning.